Welcome back, and joining us to put the day's market action into perspective is Lonwabo Maqubela from Perpetua. Thank you so much for your time, Lonwabo. Seeming that the sun is setting on the JSE, but not so much on the Rand. How have you been reading the market action in today's trading?
Yeah, it's been actually interesting to see the rally in the Rand more recently. Obviously, it's really around the elections and expectations and what the market hopes for. I guess the market just generally tends to prefer stability. And so the more they see signs that, possibly a more stable outcome than the worst that was feared, the market has received that positively. I think it's also been helpful that commodity prices have strengthened, so the likes of gold and some of the precious metals. So the South Africa's terms of trade have improved as a result.
All right. All right. Well, I do hear you on that, and it's quite interesting to see the optimism that we are seeing around the elections, and seeming that markets are maybe starting to think, in terms of the ANC gaining more votes, that rather the devil that we know. Let's go into some company news that came out today. Transaction Capital, quite a big one, although the stock is not so big now. They came out with interim results saying that they've narrowed their loss on that front. Of course, quite a number of strategic moves that they have made, where basically the business is not the same business as it was about a year ago. I actually did see some share price movement there, a decline of over 5% at some point. I don't know if it's because it's signaling that markets are maybe still seeing more red than green at this point.
Yeah, it is. There was quite a lot of moving parts to the results. So, the first one, I think, as you mentioned, the unbundling of We Buy Cars, the sale and unbundling of We Buy Cars, so which then has resulted in a much smaller business. And then more, some once-off losses. So they did change the terms of the insurance that they provide to their customers, and consequently they had to then take a hit to the debtors book. As a consequence, it was nearly R1 billion loss that they incurred there, which contributed to why the business made a loss of around R1.70 also. But what was interesting, I noted that the debtors book continues to deteriorate. So, the late default loans increased from about a third of the book to about half of the book. So collections continue to remain difficult at SA Taxi.
Yeah.
And then I guess probably the last thing the market will want to see is just to see that the originations are back, so they can write new business, which currently the banks have put a moratorium on new business, and so that makes the economics more difficult. But they have significantly improved the balance sheet, sitting on net cash, so the balance sheet risk is averted. But I'd say that now the market want to get a sense of what's left behind and what's the true profitability of it going forward.
All right. Well, let's take a look at Coronation. Actually, a turnaround there, releasing interim results. We did see an increase in revenue, headline earnings per share also climbing. The asset manager also declaring a dividend. Of course, we know that they did not declare a dividend in the prior period. We did see that share price inching higher by over 2%. Would you say that Coronation Managers is back on solid ground at this point?
No, I think what was pleasing to see was the slowdown in withdrawals. So the South African, pension fund industries and net withdrawal, we estimate around 10% per annum. And so over the last 5 years, Cor has averaged about 6-7% withdrawal rate. So that slowed down to about 4%, although they are cautioning that going forward it may increase due to the two-pot retirement system. But it was pleasing to see that improvement. And so, we think particularly if asset returns continue to improve, you'll start seeing AUM growth and the consequent increase in earnings as well. I think the earnings were actually better than what was reported. So, they incurred costs related to the tax obligation that they had. So true earnings were close to R2, or 5% higher than what was reported.
All right. Lonwabo, before we get to your stock pick, I quickly want to check in on BHP. Of course, the deadline is tomorrow for BHP to either say that they're walking away or tabling another offer for Anglo American. What are your expectations there?
Yeah, I mean, it will be interesting to see if BHP comes out with a new higher offer and final offer. I mean, on the one hand, many commentators are saying if they don't do it, timelessly, then they run the risk that they will be freezed out for 6 months, and other players can then come in and make an offer for Anglos. And I guess the copper assets are in demand. I mean, one of the factors, I guess, and as a consequence of Anglo's restructuring, is that if they do sell De Beers and the met coal assets, as they've said, and they unbundle Amplats, the smaller Anglo American actually does become a takeout target. So there's probably, I'd say, more than a 50% chance that you get either a BHP offer or another offer.
All right. I hear you on that. Well, we will be hearing tomorrow what happens with that. Let's get to your stock pick for today, Lonwabo, quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone with SA Financials as a whole. They are at extremely cheap levels. I think many of them are trading at times that they only trade at during crisis periods. So GFC or COVID. So we think these valuation levels are compelling. It's really not an impetus for growth or anything like that, but we think valuations, that are quite compelling with high dividend yields and actually quite well managed businesses.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your insights today on what has been moving investors' money today. That was Lonwabo Maqubela from Perpetua.